Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now is the former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, New York, Mr. Andy McCarthy. Mr. McCarthy successfully tried the blind sheik and other terrorists convicted of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. He is the author of Spring Fever, The Illusion of Islamic Democracy. And Andy, it's good to have you with us today.
Nice to be with you, Kathleen. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Well, let's begin with Egypt, where Egyptians are now giving their first democratically elected president, Muhammad Morsi, 1 day to step down from office. This demand comes on the heels of deadly clashes in Egypt and the storming by demonstrators of the Muslim Brotherhood headquarters. Is the Egyptian state unraveling right now, and do you see Morsi holding on to power?
The Egyptian state is unraveling. I do think he will hold on to power for a time, and really what we're down to is what will the military do, and more specifically with respect to that, has Morsi had enough time to put his own people at key positions in the military, and are they loyal enough to him that they'll hold him up for now? And I think the jury's still out on that one.
That's my next question for you. Last week, Egypt's defense minister indicated he's not afraid to send in the army to, quote, prevent Egypt from slipping into a dark tunnel of civil unrest and killing, sectarianism, and the collapse of state institutions. That army, we know, is propped up by U.S. aid in the form of fighter jets and Abrams tanks. What should the U.S. response be?
Well, at the moment, I think that the U.S. should try to encourage a dialogue that doesn't descend into the kind of chaos and fighting that I think it's going to descend into. But one thing I think we don't want to do is continue to project a strong support for Morsi and continue to fund what effectively is a Muslim Brotherhood-driven military. I think that one of the real problems we now have, and one of the things that people like me have been fighting against for a very long time, is that the authentic Democrats in Egypt are actually opposed to this regime and are really angry at the United States for propping up what really is an authoritarian system. So
if Morsi does stay in power, though, is it safe to say that the Muslim Brotherhood will be weakened? What does all of this portend for the future of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt?
Well, you know, there's no the opposition right now is a real mixed bag. I think, you know, we don't want to make the same mistake we've made in the so-called Arab Spring of just thinking that they're a bunch of, you know, pro-Western democracy activists. The thing that unites them right now is similar to the thing that united them before, and that is opposition to the regime. All of the different factions, including the Salafists, who are also Islamic supremacists and even more rabid for Sharia change than the Brotherhood is, have problems with the Muslim Brotherhood and its authoritarian practices. But they don't all have problems with the Muslim Brotherhood for the same reasons.
Do you see fallout for the Muslim Brotherhood and any other Arab Spring nation?
Well, I think the Brotherhood is being discredited by what is happening in country after country, but I don't think we ought to take too much heart in that, because you know, there was a time when we were able to discredit them when they weren't in power. Now they actually may be discredited, but they have their hands on the wheel, so to speak, and they're a much more dangerous organization that way.
White House officials met last month with Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya, a deputy of radical Egyptian cleric Yusuf al-Qaradawi, the so-called spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, who has been banned from entering the United States. How do you view this visit?
I think it's an atrocity. I really do. I mean, it's not the first time the administration's done something like this. They previously issued a visa to a member of the Blind Sheikhs terrorist organization and invited him to Washington to consult with our national security officials. This guy, bin Baya, in addition to what you just described him as, which is Qaradawi's deputy, also signed off on the 2004 fatwa calling for the killing of American troops and personnel in Iraq. You know, the thought that we would have a terror supporter like that, not only as someone we look to as an influential figure, but that we'd actually invite him here to consult on policy is just mind-boggling to me.
So what kind of message is the administration then sending to our enemies with visits such as this?
Well, it's the same message that they've been sending all along, which is that it's a pretty good deal right now to be an enemy of the United States. It's our friends that seem to get a hard time. We have made a practice of trying to support the notion of Islamists getting into power and the thought that getting into power would somehow tame and moderate them. And that, I think, has been to the great detriment of people who actually are lovers of liberty around the world.
Let's talk about our friends real quickly. France and Germany are ripping the U.S. surveillance program after Edward Snowden leaked a document that shows U.S. intelligence officials put microphones in buildings and compromised computers at the EU in Washington and UN offices in New York. Now, a spokesman for Germany's Angela Merkel says that bugging friends is unacceptable. What kind of damage has been done here to our relationships with our allies? And what, if anything, can the White House do to ease diplomatic tensions?
Well, I don't take a lot of that rhetoric from Germany and France very seriously. I don't have any doubt that they do a good deal of their own intelligence collecting outside their borders. Every country does it, and every country complains about every other country doing it. So I think a lot of what they're saying publicly is sort of for the consumption of their citizenry. But as a factual matter, the protection of Germany, France, and much of Western Europe has become an American responsibility over the last half or three-quarters of a century. In order to do that effectively, we have to collect foreign intelligence. And they're not stupid. They obviously know that that's true.
President Obama last week said he wouldn't get personally involved in the Edward Snowden case. The president says he won't scramble jets for the former U.S. spy agency contractor who's facing charges of espionage. Are you satisfied with the president's handling of this?
Well, no. Look, I think I'm not satisfied that his rhetoric actually is representative of his position. Obviously, he shouldn't scramble fighter jets. Snowden is a problem. He's not a problem worth doing a provocative act that could cause a war over. But I do think that when he says he's not going to pick up the phone and call Putin, the reason for that is not that it's beneath his dignity to do that. I think he knows that Putin is not going to cooperate with him, and he will look weak if he makes a call and Putin tells him no.
All right, Andy McCarthy, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.